Okay, if we could have everybody start to fill in, have a seat, unless you'd like to stand. I mean, you're more than welcome to stand. So we're going to get to the pilot pitch competition now. We're going to hear from 3 different groups of startups. The first group we're going to hear from is Smart Cities, Smart Transportation, and Mobility. Then we're going to hear from 3 startups who are pitching for analytics, cybersecurity, and blockchain. And then last, we will hear from solar, storage, and renewables. So let's go ahead and bring the judges for the first group, Smart Cities, Smart Transportation, and Mobility, to the stage. If you guys could just come trickle up to the stage, that first group of judges. Yes. So these are the judges for GridCure, LO3, and Quantum Spatial. Oh, we have the, okay. Okay, so our first group of judges, if you guys could just head up to the stage. Sorry about the confusion there. We have Richard, this is not by any order, Richard Amato with ATI, Kristen Brown with Exelon, Hillary Flynn with National Grid, Paul Lau with SMUD, Judy Lee with Energy Foundry, Julie Piggott with Southern Company, Carl Popham with Austin Energy, Manish Rukadikar with DTE Energy, and Rebecca Zerwas for CenterPoint. So first we're going to hear from GridCure, and if we could get GridCure to go ahead and come up on the stage, and we will let you go ahead and do your thing.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Fantastic. My name's Tag, and I'm from GridCure. Thank you so much for having us here today, judges. We at GridCure build predictive analytics for the electrical grid. Now, I know that's a very broad statement, overarching statement, so we're going to dive into a little bit about who we are and then touch very specifically on one of our applications that we're really excited to talk about. So the market that we're working in, the fundamental fact that's happened in the utility space is the average utility company today is generating about 100,000 times as much raw information off their networks, off their sensors, off their customers as they were just a few years ago. That's a little bit like going to sleep with one book on your bedside table and waking up with the Library of Congress in your bedroom. So this is a bit of a problem on the IT perspective. Where do you store all that data? It's a bit of a problem on the sort of data security perspective, of course. This is very private, sensitive information. But the biggest issue is the what the heck do we do with all this data? It's a global issue. There's about $400 billion of cash already allocated. I'll say that a different way. Money that utilities already have budgeted and expect to spend on smart grid-related software, specifically to use data better, is about $400 billion over the next 5 years. And that's where we come in. We have a platform. It's a software as a service platform. We plug directly into existing utility data stores. Don't have to install any new sensors. Don't have to install any new servers. Pull in utility external data as well, things like weather, things like population demographics. Bring that all into one system, are able to provide recommendations to utilities, and then present those back in what we call modules. Now, each module is a very specific business case. It's something like, which of my transformers is most likely to fail? Which of my cables is closest to end of life? Which of my customers is going to use this much power next month? Each of those modules, think of them as an application, and we have lots of applications on our platform. So I'm going to talk about one of those more specifically after I get through a bit more of the company stuff. Again, we are a software as a service company. We are a capitalizable expense. We spent a long time and a lot of lawyers making sure that was the case. And we make money on a per module basis. We want to incentivize utilities to send us as much data as possible, have as many users in the system as possible, so we charge you a flat rate on a per module basis. In terms of traction, we work with some really big utilities, American Electric Power, PG&E, EDP over in Portugal. We also work with some small utilities. We are the newest analytics partner, the newest partner for the NRTC, who represent about 900 cooperative utilities across North America, is about 40% of the U.S. landmass. And what I really wanted to spend some time on was one specific module that was a sort of a keystone of our application for this presentation, that was our feeder cable predictive health module. So this is one of our particularly good ones. It's a module that very specifically focuses on looking at the health of your feeder cables on your network. So for those who don't know what a feeder cable is, big piece of copper, often underground, sometimes overhead. It's the thing that's coming out of the substation and ultimately getting power to your house. These are typically assets that don't have a sensor actually on them. They don't actually have any monitoring or instrumentation tied to them directly. But we're able to take information from the substation, from meters downstream, from repair and maintenance operations that happen in, on, or around those assets, and give an order of magnitude improvement on being able to predict when those cables are going to fail. What this means is that if we come onto your network, we can pretty reliably say we will reduce the number of cable-related outages by a factor of 10 next year if you install our software. And we can do this, again, with data that utilities typically already have. No new capital outlay, no new sensors, just give us the data you've already got. So these are built on real existing customers, real existing data. Fundamentally, and that was just one module, fundamentally across all of our modules, we work with utilities to save money, especially on the OpEx side of things. Definitely save time. A large part of what we do winds up ultimately being a little bit of automation, making operators' lives a lot easier, and fundamentally, for the end customer, increasing reliability. We have some unbelievable partners, financial backers, investors. We're part of the Free Electrons program. I've worked with Singularity University. And these are some of our fantastic team members. We have folks coming from the utility space like myself, from big companies like IBM Watson, folks who have multiple startup exits, as well as, of course, globally ranked machine learning experts who lead the development of our core models. So we are GridCure, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, GridCure. You guys can go ahead and exit off the stage. So I apologize for the mix-up. This is the Analytics, Cybersecurity, and Blockchain group, if you couldn't tell. I don't believe we're doing a Q&A. Oh, you have a 5-minute Q&A session. Sorry about that.
Can I have an extra 15 seconds? Yeah, fantastic. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You said 10 times improvement. Do you have an estimate for your algorithm accuracy in failure prediction?
Yeah, so the accuracy we typically based on what's called a lift curve. So we are comparing to whatever your existing implementation or methodologies or practices or procedures or rules of thumbs are. So we're going to come in and we're going to say, look, let's do it as a pilot project. We're going to come in, we're going to take, let's say you have 8 years of historical data you can give us. We'll take 7 years of those data. Tune, train, make sure our models are sufficient for your network. And then on that last year, that 8th year of data, that's when we'll be able to give you a very specific percent and lift improvement that we see. So basically using your own data from last year, we're going to pretend that if our system had been installed last year, what would we have seen? What would we have predicted? So that can give you a very entity-specific accuracy there. We typically see about an order of magnitude improvement.
You talked about some utilities that you're working with. Are you in pilot phase with them, or do you have commercial installations?
For most of those.
Pardon me?
Full deployment for most of those.
Okay.
So I'll preface that with some of the co-ops that we're working with. That partnership, it's a national level partnership, so that's a pretty awesome thing for us. That's relatively new. So we've gotten a couple of POs out to some of these co-ops, but we're really excited to keep exploring the co-op space. That's relatively new.
So for your cable replacement improvement, so what kind of data do you need from the utility specifically?
Ooh, great. So specific to cables or in general?
Cables.
Cables. So from cables, we definitely want the substation wall level loading information, so what's actually happening on that feeder itself. If you have downstream metering as well, either at the transformer level or house level, we're going to need that too. So basically we have 2 endpoints for loading. We're going to need, of course, all the nameplate information, size, rating, when it was installed, manufacturer, that sort of stuff. And then the most important part are maintenance orders, maintenance requests. What actually happened along that cable? Turns out one of the most common ways that cable failures can be predicted is by looking at where maintenance has happened nearby a cable. Most older cables have a hard casing that can accidentally be cracked, which is going to cause a slow oil leak. That slow oil leak will 4 to 6 months later, start causing intermittent shorts to ground. So that's a really strong predictor for when we can start seeing those problems.
How are these modules how easy it is to integrate these modules into the utility systems like ADMS or other?
Yeah, pretty easy. We've had a lot of experience doing that. We also have some technology partners who can make it as simple. We actually demonstrated this. It's pretty cool. Make it as simple as to get data out of your MDMS to us in 12 button clicks. So total time, 34 seconds. So that was pretty cool. It's not always that simple, but we did demonstrate it once. We typically during a pilot phase, we're just going to give you a simple API. We're going to say send data to this specific location. We're going to tell you exactly what we need, format, column names, stuff like that. We can usually do a pilot project, a kickoff in 4 to 6 weeks type of thing.
A little bit about how much data you pull back, and you mentioned pulling in meter data, what the frequency of data you require for some of your different modules.
That's a really good question. So different modules require, of course, different frequencies. Cables, you expect to drop them in the ground for 30, 40, 50 years. We don't need particularly high velocity data for these. The better the granularity, of course, the better for us. So if we can get 15-minute meter data, that's fantastic. We don't need it every 15 minutes. If you get that to us every day, every week, that's probably fine for cable-related technologies. We have a whole other module that looks at meter-specific low-voltage alarms that are going to indicate maybe a tree tapping a line or some other piece of equipment failing. Those we're going to want to see at a lot higher velocity. So we're going to want to see those at a minimum daily, just because those are impacting an individual meter and individual customer. Long story short, it depends on the module. We'll work with what the utility can send.
How does this compare? How does this compare with the other options for data analytics, predictive analytics that utilities have out there?
Got an example for me? I'll give you my favorite examples, how about? Okay. So one of the classic ways that utilities develop analytical tools is they do it in-house. And so in that sense, you're getting maybe Capgemini or Accenture or EMC to come and help build that with you. Compared to those guys, I was on those projects. That was my project up at BC Hydro. We're coming in 2 orders of magnitude cheaper and significantly faster. My project was a 4-year project that really should have taken a month. And compared to a lot of the other technology, also much cheaper, much faster. Thank you so much.
So the first.
What? Oh, it beeped.
Hi. So my name is Scott Kessler. I am with LO3 Energy. So back in April 2016, LO3 Energy launched its Brooklyn Microgrid project, the first ever energy transaction across a blockchain. Soon thereafter, utilities were disintermediated, all of our nice judges here today were unfortunately laid off, and poles and wires were rendered obsolete, as we just sent electricity through blockchain now. Regardless to say, the Kool-Aid at some of the blockchain parties is pretty good. And despite the fact that the industry as a whole is going through the ups and downs of the hype cycle, we're beginning to now see, what is the real value that we can get out of systems like this, out of the potential of a tool like blockchain to developing new applications in the space. And we think a lot of this value aligns pretty nicely with some of the emergent trends in the industry. So firstly, that we see distributed power growing at leaps and bounds beyond what centralized generation is. And we think this will lend itself towards a premium in the future around the locality of energy, both in the sense that it's an attribute in and of itself, why you buy from a small business owner, but also as a marker for more efficient grid use, which will eventually show up in rates. We also see markets where incumbents weren't fast enough to realize that they had change coming to them, that there was going to be more competition in the market, and they lost significant amounts of market share. And also that the rate of change is really quite significant these days. 25% of California's retail load is already met by non-IOU providers. That's expected to be 85% by the mid-2020s. So just like what we heard earlier today, the pace of change is expected to be much greater. And we think this all aligns well with what is our dominant hypothesis, which is the future of the grid is really one that operates with distribution-level marketplaces, where people are trading at the feeder or the substation level, and it is that trading there that really is going to be the space where innovation is going to occur. And we think it all lends itself towards this idea of customer choice, that customers get more options, and they can pick where am I getting my energy from, and I get to decide, to a certain degree, what my pricing is. So I'm here today to actually propose a pilot around a willingness to pay study, looking at how individuals actually buy and sell energy from each other, and what is sort of their price elasticity when you're allowed to buy from a neighbor. So the way that we sort of see this pilot working is you have prosumers and consumers, and they're going to be trading directly with one another. Whether this is an actual kilowatt hour of physical energy, whether that's just a rec, that's going to depend on the market, so it's going to change depending where you are. But the idea is that the two users can actually buy and sell energy directly from one another. The appeal being to a consumer, I can now buy local clean energy. I can now get something that was unavailable to me before. I can do something that has an economic and an environmental benefit to my own community. To the prosumer, the hope here is to actually generate a premium for their energy that's produced. Usually rooftop PV, but if we have other DERs, we can deal with that as well. Maybe we have to set a willingness to pay there, because if you still have full net metering, that's going to provide a pretty nice premium. But in other markets where that's net metering is going away, feed-in tariffs are dropping, this market begins to work on its own. We install our own hardware, which actually pulls data directly from a smart meter, and we provide mobile apps to the users so that the consumer can set their willingness to pay. And you can think of those willingness to pay as simply bids into a marketplace. You have some constrained amount of local clean energy, and you can run an auction against that. And you can allow users to see both where is my bid in comparison to others, and what energy source do I get, and how high do I need to go to get that local clean energy. Get some automatic feedback to go with the bidding. And we think that is really valuable data that today utilities are missing out on. They don't know how users are going to participate in a market like this. And we think this is really the first step towards doing that. What we would provide is the hardware, the software, the back end, the mobile apps. We would need our partners to provide customer service, customer recruitment, and payment facilitation. We do not do that ourselves. And we need the users to have smart meters and smartphones. So, the real value of this is not in the use of blockchain. It is in this idea of transactive energy, the idea that we have to be engaging the customers in a new way. And we think this represents a really simple but elegant way to begin doing that. We've seen this resonate with people in a much deeper way than I've ever seen from energy efficiency programs, distributed energy programs. People go and recruit their neighbors to participate in this. Community groups come to us and say, we want to do this here now. So we think this is a really great way to begin evolving with something that can be done today. So thank you very much, and I'm excited to take the questions.
Can I start?
Yes.
I think
Okay.
so.
Just go.
How much work have you done to determine what the real value of this network is? With blockchain, because it's something that is ecosystem dependent, how do you understand what your own business model is and what the value to the customers engaging, and then say if it's a utility customer, what the value is to them?
Yeah, it's a question that is, depending on where. We're doing we've contracted 9 projects today in different states of deployment. Most of the information behind that is proprietary, so I can't really share too many of the results coming from that. But the real value is, we think right now at this stage more anecdotal than quantitative. It's really getting that experience of users and figuring out, do they like this? And is this something they want to do in the future? And taking, the type of pilot I described, it's not going to be perfect on the first try. This is the first attempt at deploying a local marketplace. You're going to have to tweak that. There's going to have cultural. There's going to be regulatory implications in that. So whatever we first roll out is not going to what we'll end up with. But you have to do a first project to begin learning. So the real value here, I think, is in getting that customer experience data, and then also, just getting those findings on price elasticity, how much people are participating. That is where the real value of this, I think, lies today. And then, once you begin scaling this to tens or hundreds of thousands of users, that's where the revenue stream and the business model change really comes in, but that's still a few years away.
Could you explain a little bit more about the solution itself? You talked about hardware, software, apps. What is the intellectual property? What's unique about this offering?
Yeah, so the idea is, we need our own hardware temporarily to pull data and use it in a marketplace in 15-minute intervals. Eventually, we won't need that if we can load software onto a smart meter. Smart meters aren't quite there yet, but once we do, the hardware sort of becomes unnecessary. But we do have IP in the hardware. But really, the core of our IP is in the blockchain marketplace that actually facilitates these transactions. So that auction structure I talk about, that's all baked in. Being able to pull data from outside sources into a blockchain and then export it out. There's IP resulting in there. And then sort of just the software backend to connect all of these various pieces.
What are regulatory hurdles from a scalability perspective?
Yep. So, right now you cannot sell energy directly to another user in most markets. You have to be a retailer to do that, or if you're in a vertically integrated territory, only the IOU has status to do that. So we think what we're building is really aligned well with where things are going. In most markets, we hear from regulators that they do expect their utilities to change. They do expect them to start operating more like a platform and allowing for users to procure different products, which they can't today. So in markets where we've been most successful, like Australia and Europe, they're a bit further along in this distributed energy transition. They already have sort of what they call regulatory sandboxes set up where projects like ours can sit and play. In certain markets, we're doing this with renewable energy credits to make it more feasible today. But eventually, this all coalesces around physical energy sales. So the barriers today exist, but we think what we're building aligns really well with where things like New York Rev and California's processes are leading us towards.
So you mentioned 3 different geographies. Are those your top markets that you're pursuing right now? Australia, New York?
Australia and Europe are our top 2, simply because that's where the pace of change is happening fastest. It's where the pain is being felt by utilities today. That's where they are almost in desperation mode. The U.S. utilities aren't quite there. They get to sort of sit back a little bit, look at what's happening in Europe, Australia, take learnings from that. So there's just a different dynamic, and that's sort of why we think those will move a little faster and why we're more keen on those.
Given the number of blockchain companies advertising marketplaces and transactive energy, how have you been able to differentiate yourself to utilities, to retailers, et cetera, and educate them on what makes LO3 the appropriate company to work with?
So I guess I would say it's a combination of, vision. We're an energy company first. Most of us come from the energy sector. We understand the issues there. It is our partners that we've recruited to date. So we have partners like Siemens and Centrica and Braemar Energy Ventures, who are part of our Series A, that have both helped us sort of scale, and they've done due diligence on us as opposed to sort of doing an ICO funding process. We actually had to submit ourselves through the entire process and have someone kick the tires and agree with the vision and look at the technology and sign off on that. I think we are a bit further along in technology than a lot of them. If marketing's all good and well, but when you actually look at deployments in the ground, we're a bit further ahead there. And, I think that is really our core differentiators. Thank you.
I'm Eric Merton.
I'm Camille Westlake.
And I'm Matt Nugent, and we're Columbus Spatial. There's 170 million utility poles in service in the United States. They're being inspected on some sort of cycle, 5, 8, 10 years. That's on average 21 million poles a year, or 60,000 poles a day. And how are those poles being inspected? The same way they've been doing it for over 100 years, boots on the ground. There are numerous issues with this. This inspection cycle is slow and unable to adjust to market or regulatory changes. What if somebody wanted to come into your service territory and deploy a 5G network? Could your joint use department handling a tripling of its inspections? When you put people in the field, there are safety concerns. what if we could take the people out of the field and do most of the work in your office and reduce or remove the field component? There are numerous inconsistencies with how those measurements are taken. No two inspectors, and therefore no two inspections, are the same. What if we could show you how to take the same measurement the same way each and every time? And most importantly, these are time-based inspections and not dealing with the riskiest areas. What if we showed you how you could do cycle-based inspections? All of these would warrant looking at how utilities inspect poles, but add to it extreme weather events, a retiring workforce, and an increasing aging infrastructure. And it becomes clear that the current pole inspection process and tools do not meet the current need of utilities and are not poised to improve the future safety and reliability. Our product, Pole Manager, can answer the what if.
Insight Pole Manager performs a pole clearance and pole loading inspection that is faster, safer, has greater accuracy, and consistent results. This process uses LiDAR data, which is a 3D laser scanning technology, and spherical imagery. Both are high resolution, with the LiDAR having a survey-grade accuracy of 2 centimeters. This data is packaged into our Insight software so that the information is accessible and actionable for our clients. On the map, the data is viewable and searchable, so it's easy to see where the problems are and they can be prioritized. If more detail is needed, Insight has viewers that show the spherical imagery and LiDAR point cloud. With these, you can verify, visualize, remove obstacles to better view the pole, and measure the results yourself. The algorithms we use identify pole features and measure these features. Pole Manager is capable of performing a full load analysis on 10,000 poles in 2 months, demonstrating speeds that are 4 to 6 times faster than what a utility can achieve with boots on the ground. Not only are we faster, but we remove the human error out of the measuring process and measure the same way pole after pole. The LiDAR point cloud provides a digital twin with measurements that are systematic and repeatable. In addition to the pole inspection, we have developed an integration that takes the data and generates a 3D pole model of each pole that can be read by a third-party pole loading program. Our process eliminates the tedious task of creating a pole model one by one, which by hand, that process can take over an hour per pole, whereas our methodology can output 50 poles in 3 seconds. That's 60,000 times faster.
Utilities have never been at more risk than they are today. Today's practices are at best an approximation of risk. Risk does not lie where we choose to look for it. It does not propagate linearly over time. Today's practices come from an age where those approaches were the best options available. With Insight Pole Manager, you can achieve inspections at scales and speeds never possible before. It's safer, consistent, repeatable, and fully digitally maintained as a historical record. The best part of our solution is it's ready today. No aligning or regulatory change is needed to move forward with our solution. In the wake of the Puerto Rico power outages, which left thousands without power for over half a year, it was concluded that the age and condition of the system as a whole was a culprit in a majority of the lines that fell. This isn't some doomsday rant. Utilities and consumers are being impacted now with the repercussions from an aging grid. Get into the point cloud today with Insight Pole Manager and realize improved safety, 80% faster inspection speeds, and accurate and consistent data time after time with improved reliability for all.
You said it's ready today. Do you have customers currently?
We have 2 pilots that we've completed with customers.
Any feedback on the pilots?
One still outstanding, but yeah, we've gotten to the same accuracy spec that we've advertised with those clients. So we're working mostly on the interpretation of how the measurement is conducted, and even that is kind of going back to some of the regulatory bodies with the utility, and they're having some issues trying to actually get the same measurement twice with third-party validations. But all that is just an interpretation of the standard. It doesn't actually combat the technology or the accuracy of the technology.
We also found with one of our clients that their models of their poles were actually very off from what we found in the field. They didn't have even cross arms, that they were completely missing, that we were able to fill in those gaps for them.
How do you explain to your client what is really the ROI, or in terms of what is you're giving away and what are you getting in terms of this new service, like in terms of and getting it past the regulators at the same time?
So there isn't
The value proposition is there, but I don't understand in terms of the capex savings or in terms of the O&M savings. How do you sort of sell it? How do you sell it?
So the NASC clearance analysis is about the same price right now. We actually hope to get it cheaper, but the pole loading analysis we can actually do much faster and much cheaper, probably about 70 cents to the dollar that they spend on the load analysis. So as we improve the algorithms and the automation, we should be able to have that piece, and they're able to actually inspect more of their service territory in a given year if they would choose to do that.
And one of
those
our
cost savings.
One of our clients, they do about 40,000 polls a year, and it takes them from February to December. We can do it all by March, and then they have all the violations as opposed to being dripped, and they can prioritize those to see what their budget is and see what they're going to fix this year.
You mentioned you're using some third-party software. Can you talk about the scope of your IP?
What was the last part of the question?
So we have integrations with a couple different third-party loading applications, SpiderCalc being namely one of the ones recently. Our IP goes from the processing of the data all the way to detecting the analytics and the measurements and clearances, and the integration that pumps that data into those third-party applications.
So since there's no boots in the ground, so this is really by laser, right, by LiDAR information. What about the integrity of the pole itself? Because traditional utilities do actually do the hammer test or for the structural integrity of the pole. So how does your software solve that?
We don't. We also don't find woodpecker holes. So those are our two gaps. The utility's still going to have boots on the ground going to the pole. When they're doing the pole inspection and what's called a test and treat, that takes a 2-man crew and takes 40, they can do 40 poles a day. If you remove the inspection, all of a sudden it's a 1-man crew, and they're going to do 50 to 70 poles in a day. So they're going to complete their test and treat program much faster with less people in the field.
So there's still boots on the ground, but just not for this function?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Who would you say your main competitors are?
We aren't aware of them. Other than boots on ground inspection, we don't know of another company that's doing this currently.
How much does it cost?
It's about the same on the NASC clearance as a traditional boots on ground inspection. With a pole clearance, it's different. It also scales at volume, so the more poles you do, the cheaper it gets.
So do you collect your own LiDAR data, or do you publish? Okay.
We collect, but we can also use others' LiDAR data if it's collected to the spec we would need to make the analytics.
And where else do you see the application this technology could be applied?
Well, you can, so we're just talking about pole inspections. You can identify vegetation, so what you're growing, what you're falling. Camille?
We can do vegetation analysis. We can start to do make ready. So if you have somebody who wants to attach to the pole, we can do an analysis of where those wires are. Is there room for those wires? What would you need to do to make room for those wires? Move some wire up 3 inches, one wire down. We can actually take those points and run some analytics to identify how you can increase the space used on your pole.
But I'm an online content editor at Z Prime. You're going to see me on this stage a little bit later doing a podcast recording right after lunch. So if you're a fan of our podcast, or even if you're not, you should come check it out. That's going to do it for our first group, the blockchain group. I'd like to thank our first set of judges. Give them a round of applause. You guys can head on off. So with that, we're going. Excuse me. With that, we're going to move on to our next pitch category: smart cities and smart transportation. We'll be hearing from Athena Power, SimCon, and Resilient Grid. So at this time, I would like to invite up our next set of judges. We have Epicenter CEO Kimberly Britton. We have member of the board and director at the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, Nancy Bowie Thompson. We have corporate strategy integration at PG&E, Kevin Johnson. We have managing director of product management, energy and utilities at Trove, Tom Martin. Chief information officer at PEC, Lawanda Parnell. VP of business development at Energy Impact Partners, Evan Pittman. Commercial director, North America at Hive for Centrica Connected Home, Matt Robbins. VP of Enterprise Innovation and Resiliency at AEP, Ram Sastry. And Director of Innovation at CPS Energy, Jason Scarlett. Thank you all for being here. Find a seat that looks comfortable. Okay, now that everyone's situated, I would like to bring up our first startup of this category, Athena Power.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Raj Lakiani, and I'm the founder and CEO of Athena Power. Athena Power is a Washington, D.C., Baltimore-based company that was founded in 2013, and what we developed is a low-cost, high-functionality solution that actually helps make the grid more reliable, resilient, and automated. And within the grid and the distribution grid, where we focus is the underground world, where it's been an area that has been neglected and ripe for failure. So we're here to address it because underground faults are a real pain in the arse. So now you're probably saying, why focus on underground? Isn't overhead a bigger territory? That's true. Let's add some color to that, though. So we think about the U.S. distribution network. There's about 6 million miles of U.S. grid, out of which 1.2 million, or 20%, is underground. So certainly smaller, yes, but 70% of all urban cables are actually underground, and 80% of our population actually lives in urban areas. So we are addressing most of the U.S. population here. So what we've created essentially is call this my baby. It's a self-powered underground wireless fault detection sensor, and this product was really driven by the utility industry itself. And we focus on 3 areas: reliability and resiliency, so that includes faults, fault detection, infrastructure failure, directional fault, overloaded conditions, as well as being able to integrate renewable power. So this product can also incorporate distributed generation via bidirectional power flow. And power quality analytics, so being able to do harmonic analysis, just your RMS metrology, and in the future, well, we can do that now, but waveform capture, so we can actually predict things before they actually happen. So our business model is we sell this beautiful piece of hardware, software, and services. You all are probably wondering, is this really proven? Well, when we first started the company in 2013, we had no idea. It just sounded like a cool thing to pursue. But I can tell you now, fast forwarding 4.5 years later, sensors will be a standard for all utilities. I can tell you with 99.9% level of confidence. PG&E last year issued an RFP as a result of some very strong economic data. What they found with inductively powered sensors on the grid, both over and underground, is a almost 18% reduction in outage time, a 12.6% reduction in patrol time, and for every $1 that they spent, they saw $140 worth of savings. So slam dunk business case here. We built the product very much, again, getting information, like a feedback loop from the utilities about what they want. So we've made this product mostly agnostic in regards to the type of comms we integrate with, the type of software. So everything comes out of this as DMP3, and as well as this type of measurement sensors. I love this slide. It's my favorite slide. It's like going in front of Chipotle, and you got your base burrito with a ton of options. You know, do you need power harvesting? What type of coils do you need? Do you need voltage monitoring? What type of communications? You know, do you need avocado? Just kidding. We have some awesome customers. We started off with BG&E. We've sort of graduated. Now we're working with ComEd. We just signed a project with NMAX to monitor their airport feeder. So the list goes on. We have some great communication players. Here's some pictures of what our product looks like. This was Gen 1. This is most recently at ComEd. They've got a full solution there. This is Duke Energy. Really, really excited about sort of doubling down in the underground world. We have a new product coming out in Q4. We call it Aries, goes with our Greek theme. It stands for Auxiliary Reliability Environmental Sensor, so monitor things like, you know, what's the cable temperature, ambient temperature, are there hydrocarbon gases in a vault in a manhole, what's the floodwater level, is there humidity, right? And it's going to leverage the power and the comms from this, so the utilities get all this sort of insight aside from voltage and current monitoring to find faults. We also expanded early this year with BG, 12x expansion. We added two more customers. We're scaling throughout Exelon, who's our biggest customer thus far. So thank you very much for your time. Oh, and one last thing. We've got a rock star team. We've been in the utility world. I'm former venture capitalist, converted to an operator/entrepreneur. But we've just got a really great team that comes from defense, aerospace. They're applying all that knowledge to make the utility world awesome. So thank you so much.
Solutions on the market?
There are. We've seen some competing solutions over the years. There are differences. We are probably more unique in the sense that we have an inductively powered device for underground. There aren't too many that do that. That is really a game changer because if you're underground, where do you get low voltage from in some cases, right? So being able to harvest power from the grid allows you to scale and have economics on your side. We're also, by the way, one of the only players right now. One of our partners, if you noticed, was Silver Spring Networks, which is now part of Itron. We've integrated it. So later on, I don't want to pop out the thing now. I mean, I could, but we've got the network interface card integrated in there. So we are the only underground vendor approved by SSN at this point.
I know a number of the competitors, you could just hot clamp, go right onto the underground line, doesn't require an outage. Can you describe kind of what the installation looks like?
Sorry, can you repeat that question one more time?
So this obviously requires a little more than just a hot stick to clamp on. Can you describe, do you have to take an outage?
So it depends. I'm going to backtrack here. So in this scenario, this at Baltimore Gas and Electric, what they have is a three-phase current solution. Those Rogowski coils, which, by the way, are at our booth, don't require any kind of outage. We are devising something where you can install with a hot stick, but again, you don't really need to take an outage. But in this case, at ComEd, right, the utility of Chicago, these are voltage sensors, which are intrusive, so you will have to take an outage if you want to get a voltage reference to enable the bidirectional power flow. However, we do have another product coming out, which is a test point capacitive divider, which is non-intrusive, which can give us enough of a voltage reference to tell us the direction of power flow or the direction of fault.
So have you proved that you can preempt an explosion or a fault in the vault or in the underground network?
No, sir. Nobody really has. It's all very early. I think every vendor that markets that, like the Sentience and Tollgrids of the world that say they can do that, if you read that PG&E report, it's still very, very early on. But ultimately, we are getting there. I mean, we are capturing that data, and it all starts with, getting these sensors out there to be able to do that accurately.
So, maybe a better way of saying that is, this puts a foundation for the holy grail of predictive
Absolutely.
analytics.
We look at this no different than a cell phone in a way. We're basically cell phone manufacturers and these are our customers. And so it all starts with getting the cell phones out there and then adding the layers, applications, and all these things on top of that, just like what Facebook and Google are doing with, with their phones. This is a big Zach Morris phone, for cell phones, or for the utility world.
Utilities giving you any benefits that they've realized already?
All these utilities want to do something big. They are moving incredibly slow, but we are who are we to provide a resilient product if we weren't resilient ourselves? So we are a bootstrap, self-funded company, and we are slowly getting adopted. We just submitted a massive RFI for ComEd. We have very good chances of being a standard product within Exelon, which would be huge. So.
Penetration percentage. So you said for PG&E it was like 214 feeders that you started with a pilot. What do you need to get enough data? Because we can't afford to put these all over. So what's the percentage of
well, actually, we're trying to get so I'm going to highlight one of our mantras, which is low cost. So we really want to get the cost so low that you put them everywhere. You know what I mean? You have them in your shoe. I'm just kidding. And so for us, if we were to just monitor like a couple feeders and have anywhere from 6 to 12 devices per feeder, we could start, getting enough data to start really analyzing that feeder and finding out if there's issues. But our goal is to really have these everywhere, and I think some of the utilities are actually looking at it that way now that they're no longer spending that type of money on generation. They're looking for other ways to spend money. T&D is a major area that they're going to be putting money in, as you guys are well aware.
What's your total cost per triplet?
Our goal per, like our cost goal with this? I mean, we'd like to get at, $500 to $1,000 per phase. Yeah, really $500 a phase with comms.
How do you communicate from underground?
Great question. So in a subsurface application, it's a very complex question. There's an antenna that we can implant on the manhole, but then the question is, who owns the manhole? Is it the utility? Is it the city? So we work with the utility to kind of help them out. It has been a challenge with some of the higher frequency radios like Silver Spring, which is 900 megahertz, to get the comms out there, but there are ways, and actually next year we will be launching a proprietary antenna that can get more effectively the comms out. So, go. Thank you very much.
Is SimCon Lighting. Unfortunately, SimCon was not able to make it today, so we're going to move right along into our next pitch from Resilient Grid.
Thank you. Clicker. Can I get the clicker, please? Can I get the clicker? Clicker, please? Thank you so much. Sorry, always a technical detail. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Leggett with Resilient Grid. I had both the privilege and the challenge of being an emergency responder during the 2003 blackout. It looks something like this. And that led me on the course to being here today in front of all of you. Reading the report that asked the question, why did this happen? I found something very interesting. Every single piece of technology on the grid on that day in 2003 operated within its specifications. Every software was operating within its SLAs. And yet, the Northeast US looked like that. Grid failure is a major problem in our world today. Utilities lose over $135 billion every year from lost revenues, regulatory fines, and it's not just utilities who suffer. Obviously, society that counts on reliable electrical power suffers as well. And in the most extreme cases, people can die. Now, why is this grid failure happening? It really comes down to three things. The complexity of the grid is continuing to grow. We now are in a world where we have big data without that much information.
We have AI and machine learning systems providing more and more automation, but it turns out in a regulated world where human beings are still required to understand what's going on and make decisions, those human beings are actually under more challenge now because of our new systems than in the past. It's exactly what happened in the late 80s with the advent of the autopilot in aviation. Human beings are under more stress trying to make sure that the system is stable, and our grid is becoming increasingly interdependent. For example, electric and gas are tied together in ways they never were before. Now, ultimately, grid operators sitting in control rooms are rock stars. They are amazing human beings who do great work. But the problem is that they don't have the tools they need to be successful. Our mission is to make them be successful in their mission. And when we do that, not only are they able to operate the grid at levels of efficiency and reliability and resiliency beyond anything we've seen before, it also turns out that the regulators are happy because they're sharing information more effectively, and the grid is obviously more stable. Now, why is this problem happening? Most solutions today in a control room look a lot like the airplane on your left. This airplane required 6 people to get the plane into the air. Crash rates were very high. The one on the right is a heads-up display from a fighter jet. Literally, you're flying at faster speeds with people shooting at you, and you need one pilot. How do you do that? Neuroscience. Our solution is built on human factors and neuropsychological principles to set system operators up to succeed. We're a real-time integrated visualization for all of the information that a system operator needs pulled together in one place. It allows them to maintain the security and control the grid to be properly functioning. And in the most extreme emergencies, when regulatory requirements change, we even have a cybersecure collaborations architecture to start to allow emergency responders to get where they need to go faster. Resilient Grid is designed to reduce human error in the control room by setting those people up for success with the right tools. We've been proven to simplify grid operations and use neuroscience principles to do it. We have several key partnerships already in place, and we're honored recently to have received City of Austin's Capital Factory Smart Cities grant. And really, a lot of the work we do is looking at these growing challenges that are no longer just about one control room, but many different control rooms in a smart city or a large grid environment working together. We have several customers. Have proven success in a variety of conditions, emergency response, and so forth, and have over 1.2 terawatts of peak load currently being managed with our software. Fortunate to have a great team, including serial entrepreneurs with several successful exits in the hundreds of millions. Key founder of Energy Foundry, a VC that we had the honor of hearing earlier today, as well as finance across several different areas of the energy space. ERCOT's former CEO, who revolutionized the Texas power grid, is on our board, along with Allison Silverstein, who wrote the 2003 Blackout Report, the Navy's chief cryptographer, and the gentleman who coined the term smart grid. What we'd like to do is bring our technology to bear here in Austin, integrating all of these key components, the key things that need to work together to not just have a smart city, not just a resilient city, but a brilliant city together. Thank you very much for your time. Sure. There are several different areas that we're looking at for the future. One of the things that we found with our customers is that utility control room operators are facing a challenge when there's an emergency. They have to log and share information up to the regulatory entities, but they also have to keep the grid operating at the same time. So there's a lot of the focus is improving the ease with which these operators can handle their compliance requirements so that they don't have to spend a bunch of extra time doing 2 things at the same time. They can do one thing much more streamlined. That's one of the big areas. Another is looking at some more advanced human performance capabilities to even understand that when a human being is maybe likely to make an error in an emergency situation, to better facilitate them knowing what they need to know and making better decisions faster, which ultimately in a high-speed, big data world, which our grids are moving into, becomes increasingly important. Thank you.
Clarify what your product actually does.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you alerts? I'm not quite sure.
Thank you. That's a great question. So our product is an integrated situational awareness tool. We sit on a layer above all of the core systems that are already known and trusted in the control room. Our mission is really to look at the interface between the human being and the system they're trying to operate. So we pull everything together. We use human factors, neuroscience principles to make sure that the human being understands that data as quickly as possible. And whenever possible, turn that data into information so they're seeing less, but it's far more actionable and helpful to them.
Quick question. For the grid ops layman, can you explain sort of why the direction why we shouldn't be going in the direction of just removing human judgment from these situations?
Sure. The short answer is you'd have to ask the regulator. Ultimately, we want human beings in control rooms because ultimately it's about human ethics. It's the decision, if there's an emergency, do you restore power to the military base or the children's hospital? There are a lot of decisions that while our society is moving to trusting AI and machine learning more and more to do lower level things so we do higher level things, the idea is we still need human beings to see the big picture, understand what's going on, understand the regulatory environment they're working in. So without completely redoing the regulatory structure, human beings will be in the control room, infinitely into the future. Thank you. It's a great question.
Do you see the buyers of the software to be the control room operators, whether it's transmission, distribution, or generation? Or do you see it as another group that's monitoring them?
So our goal is to work with several different groups. Certainly the transmission and distribution control operators are one group. We also have technologies for field workers as well. We're finding a lot of mistakes are not in the field or the control room, but in the interactions between the two. So we can also support that. There's obviously a lot of things that you can do from the regulatory side, from the forensic side, from the planning side, from the market side as well. And so our tool is designed to be adaptable for each of those different use cases. But we came out of the real-time transmission operations world, so that's sort of our beachhead.
Are you aware of any other competing products in the market?
Yes, so there are a few other software products out there like GEZ TerraVision, Primate Tech, Space-Time Insight, several companies that do integrated situational awareness. Where we believe we are differentiated is we're an open platform. We don't require any other system to be locked into using open standards. We're also focused on the specific regulatory requirements of these utilities, which is why our core software does no core business logic. We let the core systems they know and trust do their work, and we're really designed to fit in with that. And we're actually based on neuroscience research, so we're also able to quantitatively show much more specific, not just benefits to the customer, but actually make design decisions for the utilities we work with in order to maximize, for example, the speed at which an operator will see something, or minimize the risk of human error in that context.
So is this a custom neuroscience situational tool for each utility or transmission provider?
Sure. There's one piece of software that's designed to be highly configurable, and so part of our process is an initial human factors assessment to understand exactly what the conditions are. The easiest example is a light control room doesn't do well with black backgrounds and vice versa, up to much more complex integration of procedures and emergency response. And so ultimately one tool that's configurable for these different environments. Thank you very much for your time today.
So I hope everyone's enjoying the presentations. I wouldn't like to be one of the judges because this will be a tough one. Could this set of judges please proceed off the stage, and I'll invite the judges for the solar and storage startups to come up the stage. We'll wait for a few judges, and Lance Lee from Aerospec to proceed up the stage as well. So I'll invite Lara Bond from Efficiency Vermont, Ben Gaddy from the Clean Energy Trust, Ross Johnson, Total New Energies Ventures, Brandon Kelly, AMP, Michael Kushner, Nomura Research Institute, Janice Sosani, OUC, Steve Ridley, CGI, and Sengzan Yenarim from NG. I hope I got that correctly. Aerospec, Lance Lee.
Start. Testing. Hello, everyone. My name is Lance. I'm the founder and CEO of Aerospec Technologies. We provide complete visual intelligence to the infrastructure management, and I explain a little bit into what exactly that means afterwards. Let's take a look at what the problems that we're looking at right now. Mainly, we're focusing in the outdated technologies, operation and maintenance in infrastructures. They have really high labor costs and extremely high risk in some of the operation that they conduct, and also running extremely low efficient. We mentioned earlier in the presentation that we're still seeing a lot of boots in the ground type of work that's going on, and that's the type of work we're trying to automate and bring efficiency to the process. So just an example of a real case study in terms of how painful this is. We're looking at a solar farm just 3 hours west of this Austin, 1,200 acres and about a $220 million project, and they have regular operation and maintenance. And one of the things that they do, they have to check the conditions of all their solar panels. And what they usually do right now is they have a 2 crew member, and then they will be able to spend 30 days on 110 degree, 100% humidity, and then checking what these things are. But implementing our solution as part of visual data analytics, obviously the data comes from the drones, the commodity. We're able to do it in just 3 days at half the cost, and we do not need to involve the local crew members at all. So that's just in terms of how much it's going on in the infrastructure management. And what the visual analytic it is this is just a brief video of what kind of data we're looking at. For solar applications, user cases these are thermal IR data, and then we had to analyze out of hundreds of thousands and millions of panels and identify what's wrong with them at 10x or more speed than what they usually take. And our smart solution is a web portal, so it's very easy for our client to use. It's also really important because they had to use it on their desktop, iPad in the field. It's fast, intuitive, and predictive. And you can see from this thermal image, it's actually a broken panel. So you can have a really straightforward visual intelligence in terms of what's going on in the field. And what this is we're building a solution blueprint based on our analytic platform, using drones and smart analytics to bring an ecosystem to the energy, to the utility, wind, and solution. And there's a reason why we're focusing in the renewable first. We can see that in the last 10 years, we've seen U.S. invest over $500 billion in renewable energy assets building, and we continue seeing a lot of them start being built. And the smart solution market alone itself is $7 billion market. So, and we particularly picked solar because we have the domain expertise on board, and we have a technological advantage. And also we already have a really great pilot clients and clients who have signed multiple contracts with us. And there is a network effect with going from solar to other utilities. And we felt like we're doing the right thing when we have these great client testimonials using our platform and speaking to us. Obviously, we are seeing a lot more competition coming up because the market itself is growing extremely fast. But right now, we have proprietary technology that have about a 2 to 3 years lead time in terms of analytic speed. And I graduated with a energy master's from Harvard. I run the BD, and our CTOs from MIT doing the computer vision and data analytics. And our investors and advisory team, they're all industry veterans, really helping us develop a solution that works for this application. And from securing the first pilot to really getting contracts from multiple clients, even getting winning Clean Energy Trust Grant Award in Chicago earlier this year, getting endorsements from DOE, and then over the summer, we're actually part of the Harvard's Innovation Lab incumbent program, really seeing that we have made great progress. Obviously, the next step is to further develop our sales network and also move into other verticals. And that's why we're raising funding to go to the Series A by the end of next year. We're looking at expanding sales and market development and R&D. Our goal is to hit by end of 2019, we'll have a $2.4 million projected revenue. And thank you. I'm here to answer some questions.
That's the image analysis that you do. Is that done on site or is that typically in some sort of cloud or web-based application?
It's on the cloud. So it's not actually stationed on our clients. They don't really even have servers, the clients that we're dealing with. So they upload the data to the web portal, and then once they upload it, we just process on the cloud, and then they can log in, and once the report is ready.
And typically, so that's 10 times quicker than?
Yeah, so 10 times quicker than the current drone options available. So we're not even, it's even much quicker than if they're providing boots on the ground and then going through the handheld devices.
Are you analyzing the data, or is the client analyzing the data?
We are analyzing the data. So we have, like you see on the team, solar experts, we have thermographers, and obviously we, as in more like the algorithms analyzing data, and then we have final checks.
Who's operating the drones?
So there are two ways that they can operate the drones. For larger clients, for example, we have clients such as Canadian Solar, talking with NL. We're actually in 9 countries now. So they have really big teams, so it really makes sense for them to build their own internal drone team. I'm an FAA licensed pilot, or we have pilots on the team, so we provide training to them to actually help them to do those on-site data collections. Because other option is to hire contractors, and really thanks to the commoditization of drone operations, and we're seeing a lot of drone operators, a huge drone network in the US and globally, that for smaller players, they have like different assets just here and there. They can easily just hire a contractor, and we have standard operating procedures for the drone operator just to collect the data and then upload it afterwards.
You talked about having a couple-year advantage on your competition. Can you elaborate on what you guys have done that makes you different and better than what's out there right now?
Sure. So our company was founded at the end of 2015. So we have already spent 2016, 2017 really first finding the product market fit, to understanding really the client needs, and then what exactly is valuable to the client. So we mentioned earlier today that use cases are extremely important. You don't want to develop technology and then go find a solution for it. And the dirty little secret, actually, I can spill, is earlier in May, I spoke to a CEO of a wind operation company. He managed about 3 gigawatts in China. And I talked to him about in 2017, we spent a lot of time doing image recognition on wind turbine blade inspections. When we talk about wind turbine inspection, we always think about the blade. But actually, he told me that he doesn't really care about the blade, because blade, you only see the wear and tear. And each blade will still function if you see some wear and tear. Unless there's a significant damage, it'll probably fall apart. He actually cares a lot more about the energy that gets produced from each turbine and goes onto his power line. If his power line has deterioration that doesn't get noticed on time, they lose one tower. It might be the entire farm that will be down for a significant amount of time. So I actually just came back from China from one of his wind farms, over 1 gigawatts. It's looking at ensuring their power line integrity, and that's looking at loosened bolts, using image recognition, and then looking at whether those bolts are still intact or they're loosened. So those are things really, if you're not in the field, if you're not really understanding what the clients are looking for, you just won't be able to know that. So that's one. And the other is we have been developing this since last year, this algorithm. And then we have over 1 million data sets in terms of the training models.
Do you see the competition from solar panel providers? Because as this industry is getting more competitive, they now offer long-term service agreements to the end user.
Sure.
So the end user doesn't really care about whether the panel is performing or not. So do you see any competition, and do you see your customer focus shifting towards more of the upstream side?
Well, our customer are not solar panel providers. Our first tier customers are operation and maintenance providers, because they have a contract with the solar farm owners in terms of we're going to do this and this time period. So we're helping them to make their work more efficient and less costly where they already have a set contract. Second, our second tier customer is going to be the solar farm owners, where I was just in one of our clients in Canada when they while helping them to make sure that they're doing this process right, and they need to know whether their solar assets are performing optimally in a very timely manner. And what's going on right now is that their current contract will only inspect their solar farm up to within 5 years, meaning that they do 20% of the inspection a year. So this way they're doing 100% of the inspection a year on a quarterly basis. So there's not really the competition from the solar providers. It's more of other companies who are trying to do similar analytics. Thank you, guys.
I need the deck, please, for micro aero power. I'll take that one. Good morning. I'm Ellie Rustling, CEO and co-founder of Micro Aero Power. We are bringing leading-edge automotive and fuel cell technologies to on-site power for commercial businesses, with a focus on electrical peaking and thermal storage. This is very important and timely work at a time of rapid transition in the U.S. energy landscape. It's a time that centralized power plants burning coal and fossil fuels are phasing out. People are looking for distributed energy resources. Nuclear plants are timing out. It's a really exciting time because renewable energies are hitting a new price point and reliability factors that they are a good candidate for the baseload electricity. But we struggle with the intermittencies, particularly of wind and solar. And when we look to batteries, we see serious limitations in terms of price point, durability, longevity, disposal issues, and footprint. That leaves the utilities with a serious problem of how to deliver electric and thermal loads when demand is high or supply is low or interrupted, whether that's a cloud, a storm, a superstorm. It's a real challenge. To that, Micro Aero Power brings CHP Plus. It is a smart combined cooling, heat, and power system, plus all the elements for a triple bottom line. Our solution is both a hardware and a software solution. The hardware for our first-to-market product is based on an enhanced natural gas engine plus thermal storage. And that thermal storage is very important for allowing us to bridge the gaps in thermal and electric peaks. We're designing that first system to be very small, high power density, and capable of a fuel cell retrofit
The second element of our hardware for the second generation is a solid oxide fuel cell when that hits the appropriate commercial tipping point, which is happening very quickly. The software component of our system is cloud-based, uses machine learning to optimize CHP+, so that in contrast with traditional CHP, which runs 24/7, providing baseload electricity, which the grid already does so well, our system will operate at the peaks to deliver the highest value to the customers and the greatest value to the utilities. We can also participate in demand response programs with that software. A remarkable or distinguishing feature of CHP Plus is the high fuel to electric efficiency. If you look at existing products in the marketplace, they're providing 28%. We're modeling already with that first engine-based product 40%, and when we integrate the fuel cell, better than 50%. Micro Era Power is supported with very strong IP. Matter of fact, our Chief Technology Officer is named on all 5 patents we have under exclusive license with Delphi, plus another 40 in related fields. We have a very strong bench of talent identified and access to a world-class facility that was previously General Motors and then Delphi's fuel cell development site. In terms of the market that we're targeting, U.S. Department of Energy identified in a very detailed report a segment, well, a market that represents $50 billion in our scale. But we actually see the opportunity for a much larger market because of our ability to provide better products and, again, bridge those thermal and electrical peaks. Along our road to success, Micro Era Power has key relationships with government and university affiliates and our sponsors. The most important part about Micro Era Power is its team. I'm Ellie Rustling. My background is in new technologies to market. James Grieve, our Chief Technology Officer and co-founder, has 30 years experience in automotive and fuel cell engineering and is really the secret sauce behind Micro Era Power. The balance of our management team, Kim Kiefer and Isai, are both top performers at a national scale in their fields, and we have surrounded ourselves with a very strong board of advisors, serial entrepreneurs, former CEO of Combined Heat and Power System, Public Utilities Commissioner. It's a very strong team. I'm here today seeking utility partners to help us support early adopters with the installations and regional deployment. We're looking for financial investors. We're in conversation with key strategic suppliers right now, and we have applications out for government funding. Again, I'm Ellie Rustling, bringing you CHP Plus, on-site power that pays for itself, a solution that's business-friendly, utility-friendly, and climate-friendly. I look forward to taking your questions. Thank you. Yes?
Talk about what parts of the invention are covered by the patents?
Certainly. The patents that we have, for example, from Arthur D. Little, cover the internal combustion engine, which is the first part of our system. Other patents cover their system patents, and they address the integration of an engine with a solid oxide fuel cell, and we have some of the early core patents on that, so we're very well protected. Additionally, we have, there are a lot of patents around that fuel cell engine integration. We also, if you wanted to talk more future-proof, have patents that allow us to operate on synthetic carbon-free fuels at a time that the world requires that. We also have 3 invention disclosures that have been reviewed at Syracuse Law Center for Technology and have been given a very high likelihood to grant. We've not filed them because we don't want that clock to start ticking yet, but we have those. We're holding them close. Yes?
I'm not sure of the dimensions. How big are these systems?
Oh, thank you for that question. We are building a combined cooling heat and power system, which is actually very high power density. We're fitting 150 kilowatt system in a design that's about 3 feet wide and probably 10 or 11 feet long. And we're setting it up in a modular structure so that it provides easy installation in difficult to reach places. Instead of, if you wanted to install our system on a roof, instead of having to get permitting for cranes and all that expense, You'll be able to take our system up a freight elevator and have easy installation. Also in hard to reach places, it makes it much easier.
Facilities or nursing homes as a market?
Absolutely. In our go-to-market plan, commercial buildings are, definitely our first hit. We also have applications in agriculture, oil and gas, and data centers. In terms of our beachhead, it'll probably be hotels, but certainly assisted living, senior living are perfect applications because of the importance of reliable power so that everybody's family members are safe and secure. And if we have the superstorms coming in and causing so much disruption, those distributed energy resources are increasingly important. Yes?
No, this is not part of the baseload. How does this interact with baseload? How do you
Okay. Thank you for that question. As everybody in this room knows, the electric grid has high reliability for the most part for that baseload electricity. And so, I'm sorry, give me the question again.
I'm just wondering if it's up to the customer.
Oh, how we interface. Got it. Yeah. Everything that CHP Plus does is behind the meter. And so we can take signals through our software from the historic profile of the user plus the data that we have worked into our software of occupancy for a hotel or weather projections so that you know when you need to preload some of that thermal storage. One of the really nice aspects of our system in terms of energy storage is that we can capture the heat that comes off the system for hot water, domestic use, for heating a building, supporting a steam loop, or we can use that heat for thermally driven air conditioning. But we can also, in the evening, if there's a really hot day coming up, we can pre-chill that system with the nighttime electricity, which is so underutilized, and help the utilities avoid the peaks on those super hot days in July and August.
What sort of distribution channels are you using?
Okay, I'll answer fast. Distribution channels. We are looking to partner with utilities, ESCOs. One of the reasons that we're looking to hotels as our early adopters is because a successful demonstration in one hotel will have replicable sales. We also are working with the prospect of working with electrical and mechanical contractors because they're the people with feet on the ground when repairs need to be done that make the recommendations of what equipment goes in next. And that's one of the beauties that Kim Kiefer brings to our management team is his 30 years experience with Carrier selling large industrial equipment, and he was top salesman for many years running with the organization. So that's another channel. Yes?
Do you consider your solution to be a cookie cutter, meaning how much of premise-specific engineering has to go into the work before you deploy your solution?
Excellent. One of the challenges currently to combined heat and power is the installation. And that installation is often one-on-one with the CapEx for the system and can sometimes be as high as 4 or 5 times the CapEx. So Micro Air Power is working very hard to have a turnkey solution, and that's part of the value of our modular nature so that we can fit in very readily and be a quick install for the buildings. Thank you very much.
Testing. It's always great to go right before lunch. My name is Omid, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Yada Solar. This is a 300-watt solar module that was born here in Texas, made at Mission Solar. What's interesting about this technology is that it was first commercialized at Bell Labs in the 1950s for space exploration. This 300-watt panel would have cost roughly $150,000 then. In the 70s, cells began to be mass manufactured. Still, it was quite costly, and a panel of this power would have put you back $23,000. In the 80s, it came down to around $3,600 per module. When I entered the solar industry about 10 years ago, this would cost roughly $1,000. And today, we're at $120 per 300-watt module. That's power at less than 1 cent per kilowatt hour over the life of the system. And today, there are large-scale solar operations being structured with PPAs less than 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour in Texas. That's game-changing. However, there's still a big problem. As we all know, solar power is intermittent. It's unreliable, it's unpredictable. And it doesn't serve as the full utility asset that we need. We all know that reliable and cost-effective energy storage is required to use solar as a utility-scale grid power. However, there hasn't been a perfect solution yet. At Yoda, we've been working tirelessly over the last 2 years to solve this problem. We asked ourselves some questions. How can we create an energy storage product that is as simple, which brings down costs, and flexible and universal to scale, much like the solar module is? How do we have a product that can be designed effortlessly, can get into the hands of installers, and create new market possibilities on commercial buildings, residential dwellings, and all kinds of other applications? How can the utility prepare to deploy these assets to future-proof cities? I'd like to introduce you to the Solar Leaf. Now, we're going to try something a little differently here. Our team is going to do a live demo as I speak, just to show and drive the point of how simple it is to assemble Yoda's microgrid solution. The Solar Leaf is the world's first thermally regulated smart battery that's designed to integrate effortlessly directly behind solar modules. If you have space for solar, you now have space for storage and a microgrid. We do not occupy any additional space, unlike other centralized situations that require shipping containers or large metal containers. We use the same balance of system, that means the racking, the PV wire, the inverters, as a traditional grid tie system. And most importantly, safety. This is the safest way to integrate storage on a commercial building, because having storage distributed in this form factor does not require expensive and costly fire suppression systems. And this can save anywhere from 30 to 60% against centralized storage solutions on commercial buildings. And most importantly, it becomes a utility asset of distributed generation and demand peak response assets for the utility. Not yet. So, the beauty of this form factor, and what you saw there is just a demonstration. We have the PV module there, and we have 1.2 kilowatt hours of energy storage, and you can scale as many of these as you need to fill out a microgrid system. And then you have an utility interactive inverter that's behind here, that the gateway protocols will be given to the utility or the building owner, and you have distributed energy storage behind any building or on top of any rooftop. The beauty of this technology is that it can scale down to 3 to 4 units and serve emerging markets where it leapfrogs grid extensions altogether, costly grid infrastructure. You now have a 20-year product that can deliver electricity at around 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And it can scale to thousands of units on an HEB and serve as a megawatt or 1.5 megawatt hours of demand response. So imagine this last summer when the prices hit $9 per kilowatt hour. Imagine having this product scaled on different commercial rooftops and being able to access it to offset $9 per kilowatt hour. That's the promise we give. We make storage more universal, we make it easier to assemble, and we open up new markets. Thank you. Yes?
Can you talk about the economics of your business? How much is it going to cost to manufacture these? How much are you going to sell them for, and who are you going to sell them to?
So we're currently structuring partnerships with strategics. We're actually working with a battery manufacturer. The key point is that the cost of energy storage is going to drop similar to what happened to the solar module. And what we do, our technology adds about 10% to the cost of that battery to regulate the temperature. And so as the price comes down, what remains high that's hard to move is the soft costs, the design, the installation, the procurement, and that's what we address. Today, per unit, we're roughly 600 per kilowatt hour. But that's very different because we're close to 600 per kilowatt hour installed. No one likes to talk about the installed cost. They only like to talk about the kilowatt hour cost. The installed cost is where the real number is at.
I was interested in terms of these time scales to bring this to market. Whereabouts are you in terms of that?
Sure. What you see here is the alpha unit, and we just rolled out 2 pilots. We have one at our IC Squared offices, and we have one in Killeen, Texas, at the Center of Next Generation Photovoltaics, and we have several other pilots that are scheduled. We just got, sorry, that's not public information yet. We got accepted to a very prestigious program from a national laboratory that does third-party validation testing of specifically solar products to market and commercialization. And we're working with our strategic partners as well of looking from the design for manufacturing stage and working backwards. So currently we're in a fundraising mode, and we are raising money to develop the beta version of this product.
Maybe go into the software a little bit. Is it just backup power, or does it do sort of value stacking?
Yeah, so there's I think you're all familiar with the wheel of the value of energy storage. Behind the meter can access all the value points of energy storage. So we didn't focus specifically on the software aspect. There are a lot of great companies that have built out the software analytics that we can import that software into the system. This will work very much like the current rules for solar inverters, where utilities have access. The software will be an additional layer based on which markets they serve and what access utilities want to control. So we were using SunSpec, specifically SunSpec communications, which has become the universal standard. Yes?
Handle the heat, and also how do you avoid being have to put a fire suppression system?
Sure.
Especially if you're going to put it on a roof.
Great question. So the heat, the reason this product doesn't exist today on the market is temperature, is heat. That's our core technology. So what we've developed is a completely passive system that mitigates the temperature and protects the batteries. Our batteries never get hotter than the human body. Even in the hot Texas sun, we've tested all the way up to 75 degrees Celsius, which is 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And likewise, it protects the battery against extreme colds. The batteries never see freezing temperatures. And that's really our core technology. Your second question was?
The fire suppression.
So fire suppression, great question. So you know when you go on an airplane, you're able to take a lithium battery up into a certain size, 164 kilowatt hours, no matter what chemistry or technology it is, because there's a safety in the inherent size of it being small. Likewise, when you have a megawatt hours of potential batteries in one specific location, if there is a failure, it can be catastrophic and have a huge thermal runaway. So you have to design a huge fire suppression system. Having 1 kilowatt hour distributed evenly on the rooftop, and in addition, our system acts as a fire retardant, and we are using the safest battery cells that are on the market that have the UL 9540A, which means they've been rated to 400 degrees without having any thermal runaway.
Is the regulatory requirement today addressing that? I mean, like,
it's happening.
It requires fire suppression systems, but if you distribute it, you're not.
So that's in some markets where we're starting to figure that out. That's actually how we kind of pivoted into commercial. We initially created this technology for off-grid and small-scale microgrids. It was through that discovery of seeing some commercial sites where we realized actually our cost savings are huge in this space. New York and some other markets have regulated that all energy storage needs to be placed outside of the building. We're already designed for that. We're future-proof for that. 20 seconds? Yes?
Are there any installations where this doesn't make sense?
Yes. So I would say some installations where this might not make sense today. but maybe would make sense at scale when we're cost competitive. Probably a large-scale solar farm. At today, we may not be as cost competitive as placing a shipping container. If a building is being built from the ground up and you can place and design the battery system in the interior and the codes allow that, that might be a situation where you may not use this. Right? But on the reverse, this creates so much more market potential for storage, solar plus storage. Buildings that would have never been considered for storage projects are now feasible projects for storage. And it's important to note that even on a centralized system, there's a thermal cost. They have HVAC systems, they have liquid cooling costs. We're actually less costly in thermally managing the battery than a large system.